Most of the monthly webinars we've been doing over the last probably couple of years now have been to explore a number of the physical tools created by RSVP Design, and we were delighted to celebrate 20 years in existence back in August. But today is a bit different. It's focused on the online experiential activities, now kind of spun out as a subsidiary of RSVP Design called Experiential Learning Tools. A nice imaginative title, we thought. If people are looking for online experiential tools, why not try and get it into the company name and indeed the URL? So that's the reason behind it. And we recently set up a subscription offering, so I realize this is quite different from the way we originally launched the platform. So I wanted to do a little webinar today just to cover some of that. So what we're going to have a look at is what does the subscription options actually mean? I'm going to take a look at the platform, a quick overview of how they work from a trainee and facilitator point of view, because I realise not everyone will have had access to the platform or indeed went on to have a look. Then we're going to have a look at some learning program ideas that you might be able to use for it to stimulate some ideas, and happy to take questions at the end. I don't plan for this to last more than an hour at the very most, so we'll finish at 5. If I'm kind of getting towards the end and you haven't had your question, by all means stick your hand up and I'll try and do it. I'm just on myself just now, so I'll try and keep an eye on everything that's going on between chat and so on, but just put a thumbs up or a wave at me if you want to stop, or just open your mic and we'll have a go. Okay, so just a kind of quick show of hands. Who here has been on the platform, has seen the platform? Just give me a thumbs up or let me know if you've been on the platform. A couple, Sally, Teresa. Good, okay, so a few who have been on and a few who haven't. That's fine, let me jump back. So in terms of an introduction, we added a subscription option recently, whereas before each individual activity was for sale or for license actually over a 12-month period, much like we had the physical tools. So when we started this online business during lockdown, it came as a result of people saying to us, literally, I think in April 2020, RSVP Design calling us and saying, we can no longer use your physical tool. Would you have that's online? So we started to look at online version of the physical tools and therefore tried to make them available in the same way that we had the physical tools. But now that we've been running that for a couple of years, we realize that having a subscription option, first of all, provides better value for customers. Unlike the physical tools business, and I know Peter is involved in the physical tools business as well, you know, having to print or make a quantity of tools is an expense, and giving people access to them on a trial basis is very expensive as well, but not so online. So it's much easier for us to provide better value for customers with online tools. The other thing is that traditionally, I think for lots of trainers, the idea of experiential learning tools and using them as a way maybe of warming up your audience until the content comes, or maybe as an icebreaker or something to get people engaged, but not always thought of as the place where learning takes place. And I think having a subscription offers the opportunity to develop a full experientially led program, even if it's online. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. It gives increased access to online tools. Again, in the physical world, I guess the ideal for me, not just from a commercial point of view, but from a trainer point of view, is that you've got access to everything in your toolbox. People are coming to your maybe training venue, and therefore you can access anything that you want from that toolbox, and being available to be able to respond in the moment to what learners' needs can be really useful. So having access to all the online tools maybe allows you to do that. And then I guess the fourth one is to encourage experimentation. All adults are creatures of habit. The first thing we do when we investigate something new is to try and put it in context to something that we've done before. And having access to all of the tools maybe will encourage some experimentation among trainers to maybe try something that they wouldn't normally have tried, or wouldn't have gone specifically on the website to purchase. So what do you get, first of all? if you order an online subscription, you get access to all the activities available in the platform for 12 months. We are continuing to update the platform pretty regularly, and new activities can be expected. So within that 12 months, if we add maybe on a quarterly basis another 3 or 4 tools, then you would immediately get access to them. Now, partly because of the challenges in setting up two different e-commerce stores between RSVP Design and Experiential Learning Tools, the subscription offer is available here at experientiallearningtools.com, but you'll get links from both sites if you wanted to. And if you go onto the site, that's what it looks like. There are essentially three subscription plans: a solo plan, a professional plan, and a max plan. And you can see the prices there. And I'm going to touch on these in a little bit more detail. For those of you still interested, though, in just single products or individual products, you can still get access to them, but they're via either the UK website, UK and international sales, or indeed the .com site for the US, which is in dollars. And if you go on there, you'll see each of the individual tools available to be purchased, and the online tools, as I mentioned, are a 12-month license also. Okay, so let's jump back into these kind of three subscription models. So the solo model is really aimed at a single manager or owner who wants access, probably on an ad hoc basis, to use the activities. And that price of $399 per year is probably the equivalent of purchasing 2 or 3 of the larger tools within the platform. So commercially, it is a better deal if you typically only run a single activity on the platform at any time. And it says with unlimited attendees. So on many e-learning platforms are limited by the number of seats or the numbers of learners that you have. We don't have that on the ELT platform. It's limited by the activities you're using. So much like a physical product, it can be in 2 places at one time. And on the platform, if you're on a solo plan, you can run any activity. But it's important to know that when you're running a session, that is an open license. So it's crucial to end each session so that you could go on and use another activity. So it's probably best suited to either individual coaches or consultants who typically work with intact teams, groups of maybe 15, 16 maximum at one time. And that's actually the way that we've developed most of the physical tools as well. The idea is that if you've got a much bigger group, it's probably not a kind of intact team or a group of people that you're working with, probably more loosely connected. And as I say, when you start a session, that's what uses the license. So it's crucial to remember to end each session. And we know from the platform that a lot of people forget to do that. From a facilitation point of view, you finish the activity, you go into the review, and sometimes you forget to end that session. Help is available, and I'll show you the articles area in a second. And you can always get email support available from the experientiallearningtools.com email there, or indeed RSVP. And there are 11 different activities currently available on that site, and some of them have several versions within it. And again, I'll touch on that a little later. The middle session subscription, is called Professional, $899 per year. And that gives access to 5 managers or trainer access. So that means 5 independent logins. The distinction between a manager and trainer in the platform is a trainer can only see and run sessions that they've created. A manager can run sessions from anyone else. So if you're using, for example, a colleague acting as a producer, they could set it up. If you're the manager, you can just come in and run the session. So a bit of flexibility there. You can also create and run up to 3 concurrent activity sessions. And again, with unlimited attendees, provided the maximum attendees per activity are not exceeded. So for example, let's say you have a cohort that's actually 25 people coming in a class. You want to split them into a group of 12, group of 13. You want to run 2 colorblind sessions. That wouldn't be possible on the initial plan, but it would be in a professional plan. Bring 25 people into plenary, put them out into their breakout rooms, run the same activity, and then you can bring them back. So as I say, it's probably best suited to support smaller training teams, consulting practices. Again, you could invite independents to work alongside you on that, and to typically work with cohorts on more than one program at one time. A bit extra available web-based chat we would include in that, and you also get some session feedback at the end from participants. So allows your participants to immediately kind of rate that activity that they've just been through. And then the top level in terms of subscription plans at $14.99 is for larger teams, so 10 managers or trainers with access. Again, reminder, trainers can only run their own sessions. Managers can access any session created by any manager or trainer on that platform and belonging to that organization. In this case, you can now run up to 5 concurrent activity sessions at one time with unlimited attendees. So lots of things can be happening independently, but happen to cross into the same time zone. So not surprisingly, better suited to support larger training teams or groups of consultants who typically work maybe with several cohorts of programs at one time, or much larger learning groups of more than 16 at a time. Again, we'll be able to provide immediate help and support via web-based chat, phone support on this. And on this platform, and you'll see later, you can do some custom branding, so include your logo both on the platform as the trainers are accessing it, but also on the email invitations that the participants will get. We'd spend a bit of time with you on onboarding support with that group via live video conference and any kind of technical implementation where required. Again, if you don't know the platform, it operates off a single domain, and we've got lots of customers who are very concerned about security but don't have a problem in running this. It's off a secure site. So again, if you need more detail on that, please get in touch. I'm not really going to go into it too much today. So here's an example of what comes out, and I'll show you how we do that shortly, but this is an email, and you can see I've got the top plan in mind. You can see my RSVP logo there on the email, so that's indicative of the branding that goes out to the participants. I'm not going to touch on this at all, other than to say we do have an enterprise version like most organizations. If people have got very large quantities of trainers around the world, then please get in touch and we can look at setting up something specific. We already have one client who has over 100 trainers who access the platform at various time zones in the world, so that can be quite important. Okay, let me touch on the activities. Any questions so far, or am I doing okay? Just open your mic and give me a yell if you need any questions, or if you have any questions, I should say. All good? Okay, let me go back and let's take a look at the platform. So if you go to experientiallearningtools.com, this is the home screen. This is what you'll see. When you're set up, you would get an email invitation as the owner of it. So the way the hierarchy works, you have an organization who owns a license and an individual email address, which obviously can be changed, who is technically the owner of that license. They would get invited to the platform and they would then log in. Of course, I've got my Zoom screen over where I should be signing in, up at the top there. And if you forget your password, of course, you can go. So this is what the platform looks like if you haven't been. So I'm going to start down in the bottom left there. If I click on that bottom arrow, you can see that I'm actually a member of 3 different organizations. So if you're an independent and an associate, that may well be possible. I'm going to click on RSVP Design. That's the organization I want to work with. And I'm just going to start on this left-hand column from the bottom up. If you go into settings, it'll give you all the details about your, you can see I'm on the Mac subscription. I've got the 10 users and I've got access to all of the individual licenses currently available on that platform. Articles, most of these are also available from the front end. So if you're interested in information about specific products, if you know our physical tools, you'll recognize Symbols as a physical and a digital product. Colorblind as a physical and digital product, and several others. So lots of articles and information here about these individual products. We also have some more trainer support specific materials there. Let me just jump back in. So this is maybe blog activities and other information that we've put onto the site. People, People are the people who have access to administer your site. So in this case, you can see I've got four managers. So Graham, Kim, Nanette, and Jeff, they could open any session. So that's quite useful for backup. I was due to run a session today. Kim's not with me. If it had been the other way around, then I could easily have picked up Kim's session. You can see I've sent an invite to Learner One at our SVP down at the bottom there. They haven't actually accepted it yet. So you can keep an eye on what's going on. Again, this will be available from the front end. I'm just going to touch briefly on each of the activities. So images of customer experience, again, is a digital version of a physical product. So this is a collection of cartoon images around the themes of customer experience, both good and bad. You can read that at your leisure at a later time, but you can see this has got you can have up to 50 participants on a single session, all on the same URL in this case. Colorblind, again, quick show of hands. Anyone familiar with colorblind in RSVP design? Yeah, good. That's great. Well, colorblind's actually even older than this company. My colleague Jeff first designed the physical version probably nearer 30 years ago. Colorblind will work in theory with 4 to 28 participants. I always suggest having 28 people in one group call all talking at once makes it quite a challenge. So unless that's part of your learning objectives, I'd probably recommend a maximum of 14. And if you know colorblind, this works in a very similar way. The briefing is identical. I started off with a complete set of plastic shapes. I removed, sorry, not plastic shapes in this case, images of shapes. I removed 2 from the set. Your job is to tell me the colour and the shape of the 2 missing pieces. And again, if you're interested in colorblind, we do have other full webinars just on individual products, that being one of them. Images of organisations, briefly, again, is another digital version of a physical deck. These are images of things that people have said to us about what it feels like to be part of a team or an organisation at any one point in time, go from quite negative imagery to quite positive imagery, and one of our most popular image-based products in the physical world. Celtic Cross, it was actually an activity designed by a customer of ours, and it's a kind of matrix-based problem solving, similar in some ways to the obelisk, if people are aware of that, but called Celtic Cross. This is a free activity, so if you wanted to try something out, you can go online at SVP, order this, and it gives you 3-month full access. If you buy the workstation product, which I'll come to, it also comes bundled with this because it works in a very, very similar way. Emergency delivery was an activity that was designed specifically for the platform, originally for a large finance company back in 2021, still during COVID, when they wanted an activity around this concept of delivery at pace. So when decisions need to be made quickly, as they had to be during the COVID pandemic, how should teams operate? And it works essentially in groups of 4. And with an observer, you can have up to 20 participants. And again, if you're interested in that, please get back in touch later. Colorblind Plus is a more advanced version of Colorblind. And by more advanced, I mean more challenging. So if you know the colorblind activity where it tends to have 6 distinct shapes, in Colorblind Plus, it's more like 3 pairs. The interesting thing about when we created this activity that we realized as well as having the large group version run exactly the same as the original Colorblind, you can also do a paired version a little bit as an icebreaker, and also a version with 4 people. So again, come back to me if you need more information on that. Workstations, I mentioned, again, is a kind of collaboration matrix activity where people have to share information. You can assign particular cards to particular people, and again, I'll touch on that a little bit later. Image of Resilience is the 3rd and final activity in the images series. Again, a set of cartoons, but this is around the theme of resilience. Certainly, again, during COVID was quite an important topic and continues to be. I think elements like stress, change, challenge, learning still very, very important within the learning world. And three more. Broken squares is, many of you who have been in the industry a long time may have heard or come across broken squares. It's an activity in the physical world where it's played in silence. Sometimes can be quite difficult to encourage. One of the good things about the digital world is it's very easy to put people in silent on a Zoom call. I can switch their microphones off, so that works quite well. But it's about lifting your head and seeing what others need, not just an awareness of what you need to meet your objectives. And again, it's been an interesting activity to play with online. Symbols, just one more to go after this. Symbols, again, a digital version of a physical tool. In Symbols, we have a kind of time trial, and if you imagine people have up to 30 magnetic tiles that they put on a board, that first bit is relatively easily simulated online. We can put a grid, we can have tiles, but at the end of Symbols, you have to move your own tiles. You can't see anyone else's onto a particular place on the board, and we can do that online by allowing people to drag their own tiles onto a space on the grid. So it has exactly the same way of operating in the digital world, excuse me, as it does in the physical world. And again, in the physical version, you can do that as one large team, or you can do it as three sub-teams. And again, both ways of doing that activity are available on the platform. And then finally, seeing the point. Again, a digital version of a physical activity. Seeing the point was an activity we introduced to our breakthrough thinking program. So it's around the theme of innovation, often used, we find, in the physical world as an ideal kind of icebreaker or introductory exercise. And it's very much about fostering an innovation mindset and also kind of collaboration. So again, if you need details of that, you can let me know. So that's a very, very quick run through of the activities and the platform. Any kind of questions on that so far? All good?
If I may, I do have a
Sure.
question. Yeah. So I have used colorblind, and one of the issues I found, or one of the challenge, is that something that you're experiencing in this meeting, in fact, which is that the people who were expected to show up didn't show up.
Yep.
And therefore, the whole thing just, let's say, it fell apart at a certain moment. Have you adjusted? And that was a couple of years ago. So I'm wondering, is that restriction still there, or is it more flexible regarding being able to work with what's in the room instead of what is expected to be in the room?
Sure, that's a good question, Teresa. Let me go back into the platform and try and show you something. That's probably the easiest way. Find my Zoom share. Okay, can you see the platform again here? So let me go into this final bit, which is how we start activities, and I think that's what Teresa is talking about. So the way that we do that, and I'll just do this live for you because it's probably the easiest way to show you. So if I hit the new session button, first of all, you can see the activities that you have available. So I'm going to start a colorblind session. It's going to be called Teresa because it's her question. And the first thing I need to do is add my participant. So I've got a CSV file set up with, let me see, this one, test participants. So in a CSV, I've got 8 participants already set up, okay? And the way that the session rolls forward from here, so imagine Teresa's been told, right, you've definitely got 8 people attending, here are the names. I've got that set up. Sorry, I need to move my Zoom bar out of the way. The next stage is planning. So this is where we are kind of thinking about it more as a facilitator. So when I hit that planning button, the system will automatically issue a set of colorblind shapes to each individual. If I don't like that, I can hit the reassign button and it will change it for me. So what I can do, so my suggestion to people is to set this up ahead of time, as Teresa would have done, and then closer to the time when you know if people are not arriving, then you can make some changes. So again, my Zoom bar is in the way. So if I go back to my settings and my participants on the left there, you can see, so I'm going to go back to Marcus draft. So that's one stage before. I've now been told that I know learner one's not coming. I can remove them from the system. So that is fine. They're removed. I'm just about ready to start. I'm told everyone else is here. I'm on the call. Everyone has arrived. Once I hit that send button, you're going to see a warning that says, are you sure you want to send invites? You will not be able to add or remove participants after this. And this is probably, Teresa, I guess, where you're kind of getting to. So I'm told that now I only have 7 people. I'm on the call, and learner 2 says to me, well, I'm sorry, but I have to take my dog to the vet, and they're not going to arrive. At this point, because I haven't started the session, one of the things I could do is say, well, I know learner 2 isn't going to be there. I'm now going to toggle that person to be an observer, and you will see it will immediately redistribute the shapes. So that's one option if you're already live and people haven't. And similarly, so that's one thing you can do if you're in the middle of it. When you hit start session, that session is now started, so people would be able to open it and they wouldn't be able to do anything. If we are, like 2 minutes in and someone has said, oh sorry, learner 9 has just arrived that I didn't know about, I've got a couple of options. I could send them a copy of the link so that they can see it. And if I send you this in chat, you'll get an idea. So if we're on Zoom, I'm going to send everyone it, but that link would open the observer link. In this case, if you click on it, it should open a window for you. You don't need to register as a guest, and you should get a view of the screen. So you could have someone come along and act as an observer. If you really wanted them to take part, what you could do is end that session. Okay, so if you have opened that, when I hit end session, you'll see it disappear. Okay. Now, I've still got people online. This isn't ideal, but if I go into my completed sessions, my toolbar's in the way again. You can see that session there. I could, if I say, right, if I immediately duplicate that session, now I've got everyone back in. I could add Teresa. I've now got 9 people. I go into planning. I send the invites. And then I could immediately, again, copy that link and give it to Teresa. So in a matter of a few seconds, a minute or 2, I could restart a session. So there are a couple of ways to do that now, Teresa. Does that help? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I wasn't going into such detail, but thank you for showing it to me that I could see that. But I guess in general, the mindset with all the games or all the experiential learnings is that, as you were saying, people come, they leave, their dog, their cats, whatever. So there's that mindset is part of the design question.
Yeah, it is. I guess, if you're talking about experiential learning, you're talking about collaborative learning, you're wanting the learners to generate their own, it's very hard. And I think there is a tendency sometimes to join e-learning, to join Zoom calls and be, very individual. So I guess, yes, there is an emphasis on collaborative work. There's an emphasis on trying to get people to turn up and to work collaboratively, but you have got ways around it. Usually there are intros, there are, time to do this. And from a personal point of view, if I've got, running more than 1 or 2 activities, or I've got more than 1 or 2 groups, I would probably want a producer who's very good at working with Zoom and do that to help me. I think much different from the physical world. I think in this digital world, it's really a hard thing to take on entirely your own, on your own without support. Any other questions on that? Are we all good? Okay, So how are we doing? That's about 30 minutes. That's good. So let me just in relation to that, just touch on a few other things. So one of the reasons, as I said, for suggesting and for asking our developers to create the subscription model is that in the physical world, and it's one of the things I was at the DevLine conference in Las Vegas last week around a lot of the developments in online learning, particularly around GPT and AI and some of the amazing technology advancements on that. But one of the things I was posing a question about in terms of learning, because a lot of the e-learning programs that I've seen are around content dissemination, and sort of 20 or 30 years of consulting, what I find is that organizations are more a product of what people do than what people know. And certainly within things like leadership learning, I think organizations are more of a reflection on what leaders do than what they know. So this idea of moving from a cognitive domain to an affective domain where you're looking at changing behaviors, I think is really important. And it's not typically been the domain of online programs. And COVID kind of forced us into that. I think, for us, even as a small business here, we have, people working from home, days when we're all in the office together. And it's ideal if you can get people face to face. But the idea of sequencing experiential learning so that the learning happens within the activity and you take that learning from one activity into the next is going to be much easier if people have got access to a variety of tools. So just kind of giving some thought to that in terms of learning programs, the types of things that we get asked about are, I've got a new team development coming together. How might I put a program together? Well, in the digital world, you certainly could start with something like images of organizations. It's probably, if you've got 8 people, a couple of minutes to select some images. And the question might be, in the way image of organizations works, is you've got to ask the participants to think of something to look at. So there might be, well, what are we like as a team just now? We've just come together. What would we like our team to be like? So pick an image that resonates with you about what those two extremes might be. And then it gives you the chance for each person to be put on the screen. That does a number of things from a learning point of view. It allows everyone to have their say and to have their voice. It allows you to hear often different perspectives on the same image, and that happens a lot. People look at the same image but have very different views of it. It allows you really to explore from that team's point of view about really how they want to operate. You could then take a break, or you could go into a relatively challenging but not too challenging activity like workstations. Workstations require a strong degree of collaboration. You can actually fix workstations in that there are 3 tasks cards in workstations that are really important. So if you know, for example, in advance that on this type of Zoom call, you've got a participant who always wants to take over, then you can make sure that they don't get any of those 3 task cards which tell the group what they're trying to do. And if you know the physical version, you'll know it operates in the same way. Or if you've got someone who generally doesn't contribute, but you want them to, you can give them the 3 task cards to get moving. So you can start to adapt these activities to move a program in the direction that you want. And again, it's maybe a 20-minute activity with 20 minutes review to solve that problem. You could then move into something where you're trying to put some of this into practice and verbally effective verbal communication is even more important, I think, in online. And this idea of actually making sure that people listen to each other and hear what's going on. If there's no kind of active listening in colorblind, if you've done this in the physical version, it's the same in the digital version, then groups will really struggle with it. So you could easily run, that's a half-day program with 3 different activities, which would move people from a pretty early state, from maybe when they don't know each other too well, to having some real effective and important communication between them. The idea of collaboration, again, I was interesting to be there last week and to listen again to people still talking about how do we get rid of silos in organizations, how do we increase collaboration across teams and team working. Again, you could start with something like Celtic Cross, which could be seen as a 15-minute icebreaker with a little bit of review. So it's a problem solving. You need to share information. Everyone's got information that's going to be important to that activity. If they don't collaborate and share on it, the group isn't going to be successful. So it gets people into the right mindset. Moving on to something like broken squares. And again, if you only focus on your own requirement in broken squares, you won't solve that activity. So maybe the review coming out of Celtic Cross, you could actually ask people to try and groove in some new behaviours. And I think that's the key thing. You know, it's a really unusual person who goes on a training session, gets some content, you know, around things like leadership style or personal style, and immediately goes into work and tries that. You know, it's such a high risk activity. Whereas in an online program like this, you might be able to do it. And then maybe finish off with something like seeing the point. Seeing the point's quite different. It's quite tactile. It's not just about sharing information. It's done in individual groups, and it's about, you know, how do we do more with less? And I guess that's the idea of collaboration. You know, collaboration has to be with the business purpose in mind, bearing in mind we're talking about workforce-based learning here. Seeing the point as an ideal activity for saying, well, let's see there's more than one way to look at resource management. How do we get extra? So some strong messages come out of seeing the point. A third idea, and again, we get asked a lot about, is high performance teams. This also struck me because Las Vegas is currently gearing up for its first Grand Prix. And if you know the city well, you'll know what a state Las Vegas Boulevard is in. But high performance teams, a lot of people think about, you know, the speed that you can change a Formula One tire. But, you know, the idea of high performance teams is just as relevant in just about any organization. So you could start and another way to think about using experiential learning tools, whether in the physical or the digital domain, is I'm trying to sensitize people to some content that's going to be followed. Another way of putting it is, you know, do I want to catch people in the act of being themselves? Because sometimes in workforce development, it's about letting people understand the effect that their behavior has on others and letting them, you know, get some self-discovery. Emergency delivery is a really tough activity. Most groups who, unless they're high-functioning teams already, will not complete it in 20 minutes. And I mentioned that this activity was designed and originally for a finance company, and they recognized that they had a problem, and they moved this to the start of the program. And most groups failed in the activity, and what they wanted to show was we really need to find a different way of working. We need to be able to make decisions quicker. We need to be able to act on feedback received. And emergency delivery used in this context could be useful from that. So understanding what was missing, because it's unlikely, as I say, a group would be able to do that. And I think we originally said 15, but 20 minutes is probably ideal. You could then move on to something a little bit different, like images of resilience. So in high performance teams, there are always pressure, and people will deal with that in a different way. And images of resilience would allow that time, you know, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of sharing, to allow people to explore what their reaction is when they feel pressure through the power of imagery. And imagery really helps give people that vocabulary to talk about it. And again, if you're not familiar with images of resilience, then let me know. And then finally, you could finish with probably the most difficult task we have, which is symbols. And if people have been through these first two stages, had some review, they should have the opportunity to put symbols into practice. You can actually, as I mentioned earlier, run symbols as a single team, or you can run it in groups. And that's about improving performance. You maybe have 30 to 45 minutes of discussion for people to try and figure out where their parts go in this grid. But then they only have a couple of minutes to drag all their tiles into the correct place and basically have one chance at it. So when you've only got one chance of doing something right, launching a new product, starting a new business, whatever it would be, it's important that you rehearse that. And high performance teams do a lot of rehearsal. And typically in symbols, if the group doesn't rehearse or at least plan for that final sort of 2-minute task out of the 30 to 40 minutes activity, then they're unlikely to be successful. So some good strong messages coming out of using activities maybe in this order. The idea of sales and customer service, we are not sort of sales experts or customer service experts, but we know a few things about that process. The first is that it's really important to listen to customers. So Colourblind Plus, as I mentioned, has a 5-minute paired activity. So you can set people up in pairs and they can run this little 5-minute activity, which is a little bit of a challenge, but gives them some good insight into clarity of communication. You could then roll on to something like images of customer experience. And here we're asking, again, taking generative learning, asking people to put themselves in the experience of a customer. So, looking at these images, choose one or more that reminds you of experiences as a customer, good or bad, and then look at those to see how those might relate to the experiences you have. And then finally, as I mentioned, seeing the point, which is around innovation, but are there other ways that we can improve that sales process? Are there other things that we haven't thought about? Are there other ways we can improve customer service? So again, might be a useful dropping off point into more of a discussion about how you change processes. So a very quick rattle through some program ideas, but really for the first time, I think we've got an offer that could give to trainers, how they can stitch together activities in any kind of format that works well for them, rather than having to preempt, well, I know I can use Colourblind for this, and I know I can use workstations for this. If you've got access to all of them, hopefully it makes things a little bit easier in terms of your design process. One final thing let me leave you with, and that's to say if you want to get access to any of the tools, if you want to try them out, have a look at. The other good thing about running an online platform is it's very easy to set you up and give you a few days or a week's access to it. So if any of those online activities are of interest, then please drop an email to sales or to the ELT, and we'd be glad to set that up for you.